This information was originally presented to building and curriculum leaders from IU13 schools on the afternoon of February 11th, 2013. Joey Ryder-Bertrand and Amanda Paveglio co-presented. Joey is the MSP Project Director, and Amanda is the MSP Project Coordinator. For publishing purposes, the presentation has been split into 3 parts. This is Part 1. This recording was made by Amanda Paveglio on February 25th, 2013. Welcome! Part 1 of our presentation will cover the following topics. What is the MSP grant program as it exists at the federal level? How will our proposal for Pulse differ from our current project, Project ARMS? And what are the eligibility criteria for public and non-public schools? Details about our needs assessment and how the content, theme, and partners involved in Pulse reflect that needs assessment are presented in Part 2 of this presentation, which has been recorded separately. And the description of our school involvement model, benefits to schools and teachers, and next steps for participation are presented in Part 3, which has also been recorded separately. Please note that the following details pertain to the U.S. Department of Education's Math-Science Partnership Initiative, not the National Science Foundation's Math-Science Partnership Grant Program. The U.S. Department of Education's Math-Science Partnership Initiative is focused on research. It provides funds to states each year to fund projects that test various approaches to educator professional development. The ultimate goal of the research is to identify ways to increase students' achievement in math and science. Projects collect many types of data to measure their impact on teachers and on students. There are MSP projects all over the country. In addition to the current IU13 project, there are 9 others in Pennsylvania, for a total of 10 projects in Pennsylvania. At the end of each project year, IU13 submits a report to PDE. That report is compiled with reports from the other Pennsylvania projects, and the Pennsylvania report is then submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. Those reports are then used to make and refine recommendations and policy. Like most grants, there are guidelines on what can be funded. Math-Science Partnership grant recipients are required to include math and/or science faculty from an institute of higher education as partners. Provide an 80-hour summer professional development institute for math and/or science teachers. Provide a minimum of 24 hours of follow-up professional development during the school year. Use a rigorous experimental or quasi-experimental study design. Address the results of a recent comprehensive needs assessment and align closely to math and science standards, in our case, Pennsylvania's math and science standards. In addition, funds are provided to partnerships in order to carry out these activities. At a minimum, an MSP grant partnership must include math and/or science faculty from an institute of higher education and high-needs schools. Please note the asterisk. We will be providing a definition of this term in a few more slides. We have been told by PDE that, for the upcoming funding cycle, there is a little over $4.5 million available. IU13 and its partners will be applying for a portion of that amount. We will submit a proposal for a 3-year program. If approved, the funding for Year 1 will be guaranteed. Funding in Years 2 and 3 will depend on the availability of federal funds and successful completion of all grant requirements in Year 1. IU13 is currently receiving an MSP grant for a project called Project ARMS. A 3-year project, Project ARMS began in June 2010 and will be concluding very soon. For our new proposal, we have developed a program called Pulse, Partnership for Understanding and Leading STEM Education. With this new project, we wish to place increased emphasis on the resources our partners can bring to the project, and also focus much more on integrative STEM education. So let's take a look at the differences between Project ARMS and what we plan to do with Pulse. For those of you familiar with Project ARMS, you will see some changes. These changes take into account IU13's collected research on math, science, and STEM teaching and learning, 3 years' experience of administering Project ARMS, 3 years' worth of feedback from ARMS teachers, coaches, and schools, and the federal and state grant guidelines that were outlined on the earlier slides. For the summer professional development, we will continue to focus on activities to increase teachers' content knowledge in math and science, as we have been doing in Project ARMS. However, with Pulse, Our Summer Institute will also have a much more intentional focus on pedagogy and teaching practice, not just enriching teachers' content knowledge of their core content, but also helping them develop and build strategies for teaching that content. We will only be having one Summer Institute in Pulse, one Integrative STEM Institute, as opposed to separate Math and Science Institutes. This will allow us to help promote collaboration between teachers of different STEM disciplines, and will also allow us to focus our institute resources on a richer, more robust institute. That institute will still be 2 weeks, or 80 hours in length, per grant requirements. The location of the institute is still under development. For each of the 2 weeks, we intend to have the Mondays and Fridays hosted at the IU13 Conference Center in Lancaster, but the Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are flexible at this point. Our target audience for Pulse is still teachers of math and science, grades 6 through 12. However, we'd also like to involve technology education or engineering teachers in Pulse, and we will be looking for building-level teams of teachers to participate, with intentional interaction between the math and science teachers, a big change from Project ARMS. In terms of teacher involvement, there is another change from Project ARMS. In ARMS, individual teachers could participate for 1, 2, or 3 years as they wished, and the math cohort and the science cohort were fluid and ever-changing from year to year. In Pulse, we will engage with teachers for just 1 year at a time, and would have completely new math and science cohorts at the start of each subsequent project year. We will also be looking for a building or district administrator to participate in some capacity during the summer and/or the school year. They would not necessarily be doing the same activities as the teachers during the summer. There may be some administrator-focused training provided during the summer, perhaps on topics such as observing STEM teaching or grant resources that are available for STEM education. Finally, our institute will allow for content-specific training and exploration using differentiated breakout sessions for teachers scheduled throughout the institute. We test drove a similar model during our 2012 Math Institute, and it was very successful. Continuing the use of breakouts will allow us to serve the unique needs of the science, math, and technology education teachers who will attend the one unified institute. During the school year, we will continue to use a push-in or after-school coach mentoring model for providing continuous professional development. This has been very well received during Project ARMS and has shown to have had a positive impact on teaching practice and teacher confidence. Those mentoring sessions will continue to focus on developing instructional practice. We will also continue to conduct grant-required classroom observations during the school year. These will be conducted by IU13 staff and will not place any burden of time on school administrators. Some changes to the school year professional development include an increased focus on interdisciplinary collaboration, to the extent possible within each school. Teachers who work together during the summer would be working together through the following school year as well. We would organize professional learning communities, or PLCs, within each school building. These will be facilitated by an IU13 staff member. PLCs will interact most likely through a combination of face-to-face and virtual meetings. Finally, all of our professional development will necessarily be aligned to the various standards that Pennsylvania teachers are responsible for. We will be layering in emphasis on the math practices and science practices from the Pennsylvania Common Core Standards for Mathematics and the Next Generation Science Standards. In terms of evaluation, the areas in which we must measure impact have not changed between ARMS and PULSE. We are going to try to introduce an element of randomization into our study design to make it more experimental. There will be more detail on precisely how this will be done a bit later in the presentation. To measure changes in student proficiency, PULSE will be required to use data from PSSA and Keystone exams. Knowing, however, that not all students take those exams, we also intend to work with participating schools to collect data from the Classroom Diagnostic Tools, or CDTs, to help fill the gaps in that area of measurement. To measure changes in teacher content knowledge, there will continue to be pre- and post-tests given during the Summer Institute. Questions on the pre- and post-tests for PULSE will try to assess teachers' depth of knowledge rather than simple recall, much more deeply than ARMS tests did. Also, we are doing away with the post-post test, which, in ARMS, was given in the late spring to test teachers' retention of material from their Summer Institute. To measure changes in teaching practice, we will continue to use the Reformed Teaching Observation Protocol, or RTOP, instrument. IU13 staff members will administer the RTOP as needed. We will also be using a form developed during ARMS called the Coach-Teacher Interaction Form, or CTI, which coach mentors fill out to document the nature and content of their interactions with their assigned teachers. Teachers will no longer be required to complete the online Surveys of Enacted Curriculum, or SEC. And finally, IU13 will be working with participating schools to access anonymous, aggregated data related to teachers' evaluations using Charlotte Danielson's Framework for Teaching, specifically in Domain 1, Planning and Preparation, and Domain 3, Instruction. Schools will need to be collecting this data annually anyway as part of Pennsylvania's new educator effectiveness legislation, and we believe that it will help provide another measure of changes in teaching practice that result from participation in Pulse. We are moving swiftly through our application timeline. A needs assessment was conducted in the late part of 2012, and early stage planning has continued through the winter. On January 18th, we submitted a letter to PDE stating our intent to apply for MSP funding. Our next major deadline is February 28th, which is when we will ask all schools and partners interested in participating in Pulse to submit paperwork stating their intent to participate. We will submit those commitment forms with our application packet, which is due to PDE on March 15th. PDE has indicated that they will notify applicants of whether or not they will receive a grant, and if so, how much, by March 28, 2013. Assuming that IU13 and its partners receive a grant, participant selection and institute planning will begin in April, and the 2013 Summer Pulse Institute will take place in July. Earlier in the presentation, we alluded to high-needs schools. For public schools, this term is defined in a very clear-cut manner in the grant guidelines. Schools must either be A, classified as Title I at the building level, or B, have had 25% or more of their students scoring basic or below basic on the math and/or science PSSAs for the most recent year available, which in this case is 2012. In addition to meeting either of those criteria, applicants must also show that they are serving teachers with, quote, evidence of deficiencies in math and/or science content knowledge. That statement comes out of the grant guidelines but does not specify what evidence must be supplied. IU13 chose to run some online surveys to generate such evidence, and we will share some of those findings from those surveys with you in a few more slides. One note about the PSSA data. Because Pulse aims to engage with building-level STEM teams, comprised of math and science and possibly tech ed teachers, we chose to target schools where 25% or more of students scored basic or below basic on the math and science PSSAs. For schools where the science PSSAs met that threshold, but the math scores did not, that is, 24% or less of students scored basic or below basic, that school did not qualify for Pulse. Based on data from Title I and PSSA analysis, this is the list of public schools that are eligible to participate in Pulse. For non-public schools, there are no clear-cut guidelines on defining high-needs school. Our only restriction is that we provide equitable participation. An appropriate ratio of seats or slots in our professional development are provided for non-public teachers as opposed to public school teachers. The math on how we establish this ratio is shown at the bottom of the slide. As you can see, we can provide up to 22% of Pulse participation to non-public teachers each year. Eligible non-public schools would include only those in Lancaster and Lebanon counties who teach children in grades 6 through 12 to match with the type of public school we're targeting. You'll see an asterisk next to the 6. We would be looking to work with 6th grade teachers only if they are from buildings that include other higher grades as well. When you have questions, and we are sure you will, please do not hesitate to contact Joey or Amanda via phone or email. There is also a dedicated wiki site, iu13pulse.wikispaces.com, where news and announcements of the development of this grant will be posted. All 3 recorded parts of this presentation can be accessed there. Please use this site as an additional resource for any questions you may have. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.